1 2 1 2. Back at it. Part 3. Why I don't do Christian hip hop. Um, I wanted to try to make this one a little shorter and a bit more concise than the last two, but um, we'll just kick it and see how it goes. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and this last installment, final chapter, is some cultural things, some cultural reasons as to why I don't do Christian hip hop. So when I think about hip hop as a culture, hip hop culture, it doesn't mirror hip hop. Well, Christian hip hop to me doesn't mirror hip hop, and you know I know that there's some who would say, well, why would it mirror hip hop? It's Christian hip hop, by virtue of the title of Christian hip hop in front of it. Why would it mirror something that's secular, right? So I want to clear some things up real quick, just so we get a better understanding of what I'm saying, and even more so, what I'm not saying, because a lot of times people may not understand what's being said, and they'll take what you're not saying and just make that be what you're saying. So I'm speaking culturally, a cultural mirror, not a spiritual mirror. I understand that, if it's Christian, it shouldn't mirror the spiritual components of the culture, because the spiritual components of the culture are probably godless in some ways. So we can even talk about, the definition of secular, the real definition. That's another reason why me knowing the definition of the word secular, and knowing that it's a nuanced word in its definitions, is another reason why, I don't do Christian hip hop. But let's go with the first one first. Let's go with the cultural reasons. So it doesn't mirror hip hop. And when I say it doesn't mirror it, I mean it, the when I say a cultural mirror, I mean the literal culture, being like there's elements of hip hop. I think there's 5 elements of hip hop. I probably won't get all of them, but if I miss some, you know, y'all can correct me in the comments. So let's go through them. You got rap, you got graffiti, you got DJing, and you got producing. It's a fifth one, but I can't think off the top of my head what the fifth one is. But those 5 elements, if not more, make up the culture of hip hop, right? So when I think of Christian hip hop, I don't necessarily think of an all-encompassing culture as much as I think of something that kind of pulls one element from hip hop and co-ops it, and that being the element of rap. So when you have something that's called Christian hip hop, you would think that it would be just as encompassing as hip hop, right? But from my vantage point, it's never been that. Now, I'm not saying that we should be copying off of hip hop. If you do Christian hip hop, that's something that should copy off of it. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you have something that is an umbrella that's a bit more encompassing of different elements, but I don't see as many elements in Christian hip hop. I see rap, and I think that's all it really has been. But also in the comments, y'all could tell me if you think that Christian hip hop has an actual culture, because I don't see it as being. I do see it as a culture, but I think that it's a lot different than what I get from hip hop. You know, Christian hip hop culture to me has been, you know, not necessarily anti the elements of hip hop, but it's been anti certain types of ways to exercise those elements. Being like rap, for instance, just the content in rap. When I came in, the content was kind of focused on theology, you know, And the people who didn't do theology rap, they weren't really considered Christian hip hop. They may not even have been considered Christian. I was one of those artists. I didn't do theology rap, yet I was in theology in terms of studying those things. It just wasn't something that I was necessarily rapping about in a didactic, formation. But when I think about culture, I think about something that, you can pull from different places via different elements of hip hop, right? Now I'm not saying that there needs to be skateboarding and graffiti and break dancing and all that type of stuff, and DJ scratching on turntables, in Christian hip hop, especially now, because that's not really what you see even in regular mainstream music or mainstream hip hop, or even underground hip hop for that matter. So I don't think that has to be the case. But what I will say is, back then when I started, those five elements weren't even as still prominent, back in the late 90s. That was something that was more, you think about record labels like Rockefeller and Bad Boy, though, and then underground record labels like Raucous Records or even Ready Rock Records, I'm saying, the label that I ended up on for my first album. They weren't doing those things necessarily, but they still were pulling from um, the cultural aesthetics and of those things. And Christian hip hop to me it just didn't do that for me. It didn't really give me something that I could take home with me, um, and digest outside of it just being rap. Rapping about Jesus or just whatever they were rapping about. Just was rap to me. And I wanted more than that, because I felt like if you're going to call something Christian hip hop, then it should be a mirror, even if culturally, of hip hop, even if it's not a spiritual mirror. It doesn't have to look exactly the same culturally, but I think that if you're saying it's hip hop, Christian hip hop, you're leaving out the fact that hip hop is an actual culture, and hip hop is not just one element being rap music. So I thought that for a while it was kind of like, again, like I said, I think I said this on the first or the second video. It felt like a crutch to me. It felt like something that, people were using as a label to reach both sides, meaning Christian and secular, right? Christian hip hop, so the Christians will be okay with listening to it. Christian hip hop, because it still has hip hop in the title. So people who may not listen to Christian music, they listen to hip hop. Well, maybe they'll give Christian hip hop a listen because it has hip hop in the title. So it's still a way to kind of really play both sides. And for me, I didn't really see the need to play both sides in that way. If I was going to play both sides, it wasn't going to be me playing. It was going to be me being serious about just who I am and what I bring to the table. And that's what I did. So, it really got to a point where I was like, this isn't something that is giving me like the cultural nutrition that I got from hip hop, holistically. And I didn't understand why other people weren't really seeing that or pointing that out, that it was using just one element of the culture of hip hop, but then co-opting it in that one element and calling that Christian version of it Christian hip hop. But you can't really call it Christian hip hop if it's not a complete culture, in my opinion. I think at best you could call it Christian rap, or gospel rap. But to call it Christian hip hop, I think it was always a bit disingenuous to me, because it's, again, not all encompassing like hip hop is, or if you won't say all encompassing, just as encompassing as hip hop is. So, and then going into the second portion of it, was really me understanding that, the church by and large was always late to the party when it came to art. Always. When it came to, um, music. It's interesting because that wasn't really the case in centuries past, because, I found out that there was a lot of people who were Christian, um, that were a part of different cultures in other centuries. Like you got Bach. Bach was a believer. You got Rembrandt. He was a painter. You got people like Michelangelo, if I'm not mistaken, and different other people. C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, who did wrote Lord of the Rings, the book. So, yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, somebody was telling me something about the writer of Harry Potter too. I'm not sure how true that is though. But you know, they made the word secular synonymous with sin, and that wasn't the definition that I had of secular. You know, it wasn't something that was sinful as much as it was something that didn't necessarily attach itself to um, religiosity or religion. It was minus religion, something that was not necessarily um, sinful, but something that was separate from having talking points about things regarding religion, and that's not sinful. You have things that are secular that aren't sinful. For instance, like football. You know, the NFL is not sinful, but it's secular. But for many, they would laugh at that because their definition for secular has always been something that was sinful. So why would you, as a Christian, want to do anything that's secular, right? So yeah, I think that me understanding that their definition for secular was never accurate and holistic, rather. You know, are there things that are secular that are sinful? Of course, absolutely. But to broad stroke the term secular and make everything that is secular sinful, that's disingenuous, you know, to especially to the actual definition of the word secular. But because we had leaders, my allergies are killing me. But since we had leaders in the church who were telling us what it was and what it wasn't, we didn't really do our due diligence to see if they were telling us the truth or what they said was right and exact. Later on in life, I came to the realization that they weren't giving me the whole truth. And some of it was biased because they had personal agendas to further their Christian platforms. So when you look at marketing, a lot of marketing in Christian music and in church in and of itself is always or oftentimes marketed to other Christians. So if you know that your congregants by and large are people who view the term secular as something negative, you have to push the Christian thing. Christian is Christian is Christian is Christian. Even if you're doing hip hop, which by Christian standards would be secular, it's okay if you put Christian in front of it or if you do a Christian version of it. You know, so um, that was that was a bit problematic to me because I knew as a Christian, I didn't have to do a Christian version of anything for me to be okay in God's sight. I just had to do whatever I did with excellence and not displease God with the content that I create. You know, so if I want to do a album about my family or about the park, I can do that, and God is not pleased. Um, can we talk about you know the idea of just being somebody who um, is a content creator and is a Christian, but they never make things that point to their faith? Is that okay, or is that not okay? If you ask me, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think that the measuring rod for Christian creativity is if it's the content is Christian. Uh, the measuring rod for me for Christian creativity or creativity from Christians is the person who's doing it, is their heart and mind being sanctified. You know, so is your mind being renewed to and becoming the mind of Christ? So that was what was happening in my life. So I knew that I didn't necessarily need to, you know, do a Christian version of hip hop, which would mean now my content has to be talking about Christian things. Whereas in hip hop, You have people who are of different religions, even Christian, but you have Muslims, five percenters, and their content may not be necessarily about Islam, as much as we know that they're Muslim, and their faith is pulled from Islamic beliefs. And I think that what they believe will come out in their music, so you'll know, oh, this person seems like they may be a 5%er or what have you, just because who you are bleeds out, right? So those are just a couple of the other reasons I think that I wanted to touch on, just the cultural aspect of, or the lack of culture that I felt like Christian hip hop had, but or whatever the culture actually was, me rejecting that, me saying that this isn't a culture that I really feel like it. I don't even feel safe here as a Christian. I saw how they were attacking other Christians because they just made good music that was reflective of their day that they had, or the week that they had, or the lifestyle that they lived. Even if I wasn't pro those artists or riding around listening even to those artists, I didn't get why those artists were really being demonized and condemned for the content that they were creating in their music. I didn't understand, even though I'm somebody who may not have agreed with those Christians in terms of some of their non-essentials. I felt that they should still be allowed to make the kind of content and the kind of music that they desire to make, as long as it doesn't go against what they believe. So that's been a starting point for me, in terms of me thinking about my faith when I'm being creative. My starting point is, I don't want to do things that would make people think that I'm not a Christian, or do things that would go against my faith as a Christian. So that was really it. So, there you have it. I mean, that's basically it in a nutshell, as to why, I don't do Christian hip hop. Again, are some of those guys friends of mine? Absolutely. From the top down, from the producers to the artists to the people who run the platforms, those are friends of mine. We speak on the phone, we text, we talk, we do songs together. So obviously I don't have a real issue with Christian hip hop or the people who do it, because we wouldn't have relationships, right? And you wouldn't hear us doing songs together at times. So yeah, man. If y'all got any questions, man, hit me in the comments, and let's extend the conversation. But I really hope this was helpful. I hope this 3-part series trilogy was a little bit more helpful in terms of me explaining why I never saw the need to do Christian hip hop. It wasn't like I had something against it coming in, or even now, as much as it just didn't seem like something that was necessary for me to do, knowing what I knew. Now, if I didn't know what I knew, then again, I may have felt the need to say what I do is Christian hip hop, because I thought maybe God would require that. But me knowing what I know and having known what I knew, again, just didn't seem necessary. So, and it still doesn't to this point. I see artists who kind of followed after that and were starting to say they don't do Christian hip hop. Some of them are friends of mine, and now it seems like they're kind of, they had their little time to shine or whatever, and got their little 15 minutes of fame, if you will, from hip hop. But now they seem to be coming back to, Christian hip hop. And I told people that probably would happen. These are artists that came in the game on their first album saying they don't do Christian hip hop, like I did. These are artists who made a career off of doing Christian hip hop, and then said I don't do Christian hip hop because they felt like they were at a comfortable space enough where they reached the ceiling of Christian hip hop, and they didn't need to claim it anymore. And I never thought that was cool. Y'all see, I be defending CHH as much as y'all think I be defending y'all too. I don't think that's cool, So, but much love to those guys. We have conversations on the phone and via DM and text, and those are my guys. So my allergies are killing me. I hope y'all could even hear me, but Yo, comment, like, subscribe, share. Let me know how y'all feel. I'm really glad to be able to get this off my chest and really finally share this with y'all in a way that I feel like is a bit more concise. Just let me know how y'all feel about it. Uh, Look out for the next videos. We got some more topics coming. It's gonna be real interesting. I'm really glad that y'all still sticking around. New music on the way sooner than y'all think. Remember I said that. Sooner than y'all think. I got y'all. One love. Philly.